Oh man. So I know I'm just bringing this up now at the beginning, and I'm going to surprise you with this, but
Do
you have a movie ready for next time? Because I didn't tell you needed to have one ready.
You did not tell me that.
I know.
So
I know, my son.
Now I have to.
Now during the show, like you've done before, you have to come up with one as we're talking about another movie.
It's a good thing you told me that before we started this new episode of the Cinema Discovery Project, because I need to pick a new movie for us to discover next time.
Yeah.
But of course, we're back once again with a brand new episode. And I'm Andrew Cabral, and I'm always with my co-host, Stephen Billings.
Hello, people. And
hello, everyone.
And if you didn't hear last week, we had Dan Skip Allen on for our best of 2020, our favorites of 2020. So you should go check that out if you haven't yet. And you can check that out on Apple Podcasts or Podbean. Please give us a like or comment. Let us know what you think of what we're doing. We're going to do it anyway, whether you like it or not. But
very true.
But we'd like to hear from you.
It was our top 10 of the year of 2020. I almost said of the year, but we are well into 2021 now. It is towards the end of February of 2021 already. It's going to be March in a week or so.
Yeah, it's my birthday in a few weeks.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. When's your birthday?
March 11th.
Oh, nice.
I think we're doing it. I think we're set up to do an episode that weekend, maybe.
Oh, that's going to be a celebratory weekend.
Yeah. Maybe we should do movies about birthdays. That'll give you an idea.
I guess. That's a research
project. I know, right there. That might be a little bit too hard to figure out during the episode.
Yeah, it may be a little bit too hard to figure out now off the top of my head. But
right here, 16 candles. 16 candles.
Oh,
damn! I just gave it away.
Candles.
No, I'm just kidding. Pick something else.
I'll be honest, not a great film. Doesn't quite hold up.
Well, it doesn't have to be a good movie. We don't have to talk.
Give me some pretty.
We don't have to talk about good movies every time.
That's true. You know? I guess that is also very true. But it is nice to be able to explore movies in a more positive way than negative way. There's a lot of negativity in the world.
That is
a lot
true.
of negativity. Yeah. But today, we might as well get into it right away, or. Now.
We didn't tell you what we were going to do this week because we
didn't know until a couple of days ago, or at least a week ago or so. Steven came up with the idea. He pitched. Well, he didn't pitch this movie to me. I had seen it already, but it was just something that I was surprised. Like, oh, you want to talk about that? Sure, I want to hear what you have to see, but I want to hear what you have to say about it because this is Steven's first time watching this particular movie, and this movie is The Watermelon Woman, directed by Cheryl Dunye. And it's probably a film many of you may have never heard of before. It's a movie I had never heard of before until 2018, that long ago, which was 3 years ago. Time is a funny thing. I can't believe that's 3 years ago. And yeah, this is a movie that I didn't know existed until then. And we're going to get into it. But Steven, how did you come across this movie and what made you want us to talk about it on this episode?
Well, I mean, first off, it is February and we're celebrating Black History Month, and I think we should be celebrating Black History all year. It shouldn't really matter, but society has deemed this a month that we really celebrate Black filmmakers, and this Cheryl Dunye is a Black filmmaker, and not only a Black filmmaker but a lesbian filmmaker. Yes. So,
she is.
And if I'm not mistaken, she is the first female lesbian filmmaker that we know of, right? That's had a film put out.
She is.
I might have misread a fact.
She's I think she is the first open Black lesbian filmmaker.
Sure, there, yeah.
To make a movie.
Yeah,
I believe. I don't know why it's no longer in the trivia, but I'm just looking at IMDb. Usually, like some of that's in the trivia, but it apparently is not.
I thought that's where I read it, but yeah, I mean, a lot of what I started out, deciding to do this because of that. But I first heard about this movie. I think I've used this as a crutch before, but I listened to a podcast called Critically Acclaimed. And they brought this up on an episode. Of somebody had written in about this movie, and then they checked it out and loved it. So I was like, well, I mean, if they think it's good enough for me. So I want to check it out. And you know, I had heard this film had somewhat of a kind of meta quality to it, and I like stuff like that. So, and it's in the '90s, and I'm a '90s kid, and it's, you know, I've heard it, and then I heard it was some of it had some stuff about video stores, and I'm like, I love video stores, you know, so I wanted to check it out. I had a lot of things going for it that made me interested. So, yeah, I mean, I can tell you right now, this movie for people that have not heard any, like me, going in completely basically blind, this is a very lo-fi movie. If you're not into that kind of like style, where it's almost kind of like video quality, like video camera quality, not like high def cameras, then maybe this isn't for you. But I'm telling you, the subject matter is worth a watch. But
oh yeah, I think it's to be honest, watching it a second time, I found myself getting more and more out of it. Now that I've learned a lot more about the history of black cinema,
yeah,
and really what this film is exploring with that, and also how she's able to incorporate such a unique style into doing it. And like Steven said, very lo-fi. This movie was made for $300,000 in the mid-90s.
and
This movie came out in 1996, but I believe that was only at the Berlin Film Festival and the Toronto Film Festival. It didn't get like a theatrical release until early 1997.
Yeah.
So we're talking mid-90s, independent, you know, guerrilla style cinema, and it's a really interesting, not even like it's like quasi time capsule of a movie. It's almost like a faux documentary, faux cinema verite. It's really unique, and it's part of several movements that were happening in cinema in the 90s. It's part of the new queer cinema, because like we said, Cheryl Dunye is a gay woman, and her films were very were all about that. If you look, she had a lot of short films that she did starting her career in the early 90s, starting her career around 1990, actually. All of her films were about kind of sexual relationships between gay, you know, homosexual people and stuff like that. And she was really, really open about that. Like Steven, like you saw, we'll get into in this film, very just, not, I wouldn't even say graphic, just honest.
Yeah.
Very honest about sexual interactions between sexual people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's really refreshing to see that, especially in a world where in cinema, typically a lot of that stuff is shied away from. Even now, even in today's modern society, people are afraid to show interactions between a homosexual or LGBTQ plus people on screen, or if they do it very quickly, or they try to hide it or imply it. No, she's right out there just showing it because it's a natural part of her life and the life of, you know, people in general. So her films are very much have that similar style, and it's really fascinating to go back and watch that. And she was not only part of the new queer cinema, she was also part of the kind of American independent cinema of the 90s, which we did a whole episode on.
Yes.
Where you got people like Kevin Smith, Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez, Steven Soderbergh, et cetera, just mounds of people, you know, coming out of the woodworks, making smaller independent films. People who, you know, some went to film school, some didn't go to film school, but they were really getting their start at places like film festivals like Sundance or Slam Dance or whatever dance you want to go to.
Yeah.
And
Dance the Night Away.
Dance. You
Well,
know that song?
Oh yeah. and a lot of that was because the technology grew, you know. So it gave a lot of people opportunities to make movies when they couldn't have before, and that's a lot of what this movie's the ability to make this movie that we're talking about today was, I think, because of that. You know, I mean, you can tell it was definitely made for the. It looks like on video, like videotape.
Oh yeah.
No, it's not.
I don't know. It may have been shot on film, but I don't know.
It looks pretty lo-fi. Actually. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the film. See, that's the thing is that there's two different styles working in this movie. A lot of it's seems like it could have been shot on film, but then there's parts of it that are the documentary style that I think were shot on video. Yeah, I mean, so should we get into it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to look up that quote that I saw. For some reason, it's not on any. I don't know. It was weird because when we first talked about the movie, it was in the trivia of IMDb, and now it's not. Where this was the first like theatrical film from an openly black lesbian woman. And I think that's the quote. We're not exact on that, but trust me, it's a groundbreaking film for LGBTQ people in cinema. And this was only 1996. So I wanted to make that point really clear because it's kind of important because that was only, what are we talking, 25 years ago now?
Yeah.
I can't believe it's been 25 years since like 1996, but that's a whole different story. But yeah, let's get into it. It's not a long movie. This movie is like 85 minutes long or so.
Yes.
And yeah, let's get into it. So Cheryl Dunye not only wrote, directed, but she also starred in the film as a character that is kind of herself in a way. It's almost like a self-biographical film because the backstory about making the movie is that when Cheryl Dunye was in college and she was like studying, I believe like black cinema and stuff like that, she would oftentimes come across movies that had, black actors and actresses in them, but they wouldn't have any credits.
Yeah.
And if they did have credits, they would only be credited as like
some made-up name,
some random like character description, not even having a name. And this is something that went on a lot in early cinema. Went on a lot. If you think, there's only a few very prominent early cinema actors and actresses that really were remembered. People like the most prominent is probably Hattie McDaniel, and that's because she won an Oscar for being in Gone with the Wind.
Yeah,
and it was done at a time where black actors and actresses really weren't featured in movies at all. They were background characters and way background characters. They were maids, servants, butlers, workers, whatever. They didn't really have any prominent roles. But there's so many things we could get into, but there was a whole black cinema, that existed back in the 20s and 30s and teens and stuff like that. And I've actually recently got into that. Remember that Kino Blu-ray box set that came out a few years ago? Or was it
Pioneers of Black Cinema?
Yeah, it was like Pioneers of Black Cinema, and it starts with Pioneers of African American Cinema from 1915 to 1946, and it's got a lot of short films. It has a lot of stuff from the silent era. It has a lot of just really, interesting special features about the history of black cinema. But the reason why I want to say all that, because it very much feeds into not only the background for the plot of this movie, but really the plot of this movie at its heart is about that. Because Cheryl Dunye's character in this movie, she's making a film about this watermelon woman, just called The Watermelon Woman. And it's a woman that she found in like an old 1930s movie, and she just became fascinated with this watermelon woman. And she's trying to discover who she was in her life and all that kind of stuff. So that's like just really rough backstory for that. So, plot. Here we go. The movie opens up, and Cheryl is filming a wedding. With her friend. Which
I can tell you from experience, I've done not necessarily weddings, but I've done live events, and it sucks.
I was thinking of you when I'm watching this movie, because they do that a couple of times, and I'm like, I've never done it, but I know Steven has done it, and I'm like, how big of a pain in the ass is shooting live events?
And then later in the movie, they're doing like a concert or something. It sucks, because you're coordinating with multiple people, and they at least have headsets. I don't have headsets to talk with like the other cameramen. You're just all trying to do the best we can in a crowded area, and and then just the editing process afterwards is just a bitch. But so I feel their pain at the beginning of this, and you can tell one person's more invested than the other. Because Cheryl Dunye's got her friend with her, Tamara.
Yeah, she has her. Yeah, and it's her friend who works at the video store with her, and they're just like kind of going back and forth about like not arguing, but like friendly arguing, if you will.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, basically, like our friend wants to get paid, and Cheryl's like, yeah, I'll pay you whatever. Yeah, and basically this is like their side job.
Yeah,
and we're talking like rudimentary type camera work. I don't know. I remember when I was little, my parents or my dad had a camcorder or whatever.
Yeah,
this is actually
I used to have one too.
Before camcorders.
I used to have one, a VHS camcorder.
Yeah, they had those. My dad had the little, what are they, high eights?
Yeah.
High eight tapes. Like we're talking like 1980s
digital tape
camcorders. Yeah, like 1980s camcorder tapes. And I keep saying camcorder, but camcorders I don't think it happened until the 90s.
Yeah.
Where like the little handheld camcorders that you could roll around with. My aunt was one of the first people I ever saw who had one. She had a Sony, and basically that's kind of like the modern day, like small camcorder cameras are all based off of that. But think of like 90s like cameras and stuff, like videotape.
Yeah.
And it's not great quality. And what's kind of cool about the movie, like Steven said, is you get a lot of shots that are almost like POV shots of what it is to look through that camera, and it's just like a real blast from the past.
Yeah.
For me, and I think it's probably gonna be weird to a lot of people who haven't seen that type of technology before. But yeah, they're recording this wedding, and basically and then
where a
it's
friend
just
wants
them,
to
like,
get paid, and she like cuts her a little bit short on her pay because
Right.
she's going to take, I think, money to reinvest in her film project.
Yep.
Yeah, which is what we've been talking about. She's gotten interested in this woman she finds in the movie, which the movie is called.
It's called Plantation Memories.
Yes.
And I have to be, we have to mention this. It's a fictitious movie. It doesn't exist.
Yes. The thing about this movie is a lot of this movie, she like we said earlier, Cheryl Dunye said a lot of the things about her are autobiographical, but the idea of this character this watermelon woman is fictitious. She had to create it because the sad thing was that there was no factoids about black actresses or actors at the time. Like there was not anything that she could really do anything with at the time.
And there was no, even in the 90s, there's no databases there are archives and databases, but they're all physical.
Yeah, there were some computers, but it was very rudimentary at the time.
Oh, I'm talking like physical, like archives, like libraries you had to go to, or universities you had to go to look things up and to learn stuff. And a lot of people still do that kind of that old school reference work now, but because then. In the mid to late 90s, the internet was just really starting. We're talking dial-up.
Yeah.
We're talking AOL. We're talking those little CD-ROM things that they would send you in the mail. Get, 90 days of AOL 4.0, version 4.0 or whatever. And basically, and that was kind of it. But there was no, even at the time, I don't think there was huge, massive information databases on the internet quite yet.
No.
Quite yet. That stuff would probably come about, I would say more 2000s, at least in my opinion. But basically, for her to do all of this, research and legwork, she's got to, move around. She's got to go and interview.
She's got to go to the library. She's got to
go to certain archives, certain groups of people that have curated information, that have gathered information, and it's really fascinating. And granted, the one thing I do have to say about the movie, not even a negative sense, but like she kind of just keeps. It's a very localized movie. It basically takes place around Philadelphia and New York, and just the idea that she could kind of like find all these links to the past like right around her corner seems a little easy, but it works for the movie.
Sure, yeah.
It's more about the discovery than like the actual, where she gets the information and stuff like that. But back to what we were saying, she is fascinating with this movie called Plantation Memories, and there's this black actress simply known as the Watermelon Woman, and her documentary is going to be about it.
Yeah. So
about her and her life.
Yeah, and so I think after that, after we get them kind of talking about the what she's going to do with her friend's $50. I think it was $50 of extra money that she's going to direct back into the project. I think that then we see her go to her job for the first time.
The good old 90s video store.
Yeah, so we see her in the video store, and I think in the first scene we see her, and didn't she get hit on by a customer, or does she hit on a customer?
Is this where we meet Guinevere Turner for the first time?
Maybe that's a little later. That might be a little later.
What we learn... No, I think that's a later scene. But what we learn now is that they're both working there, and we also learn that it looks like a video rental store.
Yeah.
I think it is, because I don't think it's a video purchase store.
No, it's a rental store. Yeah,
it's a rental store, almost like a Blockbuster or even something a little smaller than that. And what we also know is that they have this like rental scam.
Yeah.
Where they basically are able to rent movies for free, in quotes, because they just use like random people who have memberships there. They use it under their name, and then I guess they just to preview them and then return them.
Yeah.
So.
Which you'd think if they worked there, they would already get stuff for free.
Yeah, that's what I never worked in a rental store, but I always thought that would be one of the perks.
You'd think, yeah.
I don't know.
I guess
all I know is
I guess the guy's just really cheap, so he doesn't.
Yeah, the guy's kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
we do, yeah. So so they're working there, and then her friend just is like I would say making fun of her. Like, why you watch all these old movies, these old boring ass movies, and it's like no wonder why you don't have a girlfriend, because you're always watching these boring ass movies and stuff like that. And she's so happy. She's like, oh, look at more movies with the Watermelon Woman in it. And one of it's called Jersey Girl, coincidentally. I just found that was funny.
Well, one thing we also realized, too, is that her friend, Tamara, is a little bit more... she's more interested in, sexuality than her... Yeah.
Yeah, this film is very open sexually, like I said earlier. And, just two people talking about, like... sex and stuff. I mean, like that's kind of normal talk for many people.
And one of the ways we
two young people, probably in their looks like mid-20s or so.
Yeah. But she's always trying to get Cheryl to go out with her, and she's got a blind date. She's been getting our blind dates, and
she tries to. She's got Tamara has like a kind of like a girlfriend. Yeah, they were definitely a girlfriend, and and then her girlfriend has a friend, so she hooks up Cheryl on a blind date with a woman called Yvette, and they go out to like this restaurant club with karaoke.
Yeah, like a jazz bar kind of deal.
Like a jazz bar type thing, and this Yvette person is just really, what's the word I'm looking for? Annoying.
Yeah, annoying, yes.
And it really... And they don't really hit it off. And she looks like one of those people, I don't know if you ever come across these people who are very unaware of just how they have, just like very unaware of their surroundings and like the effect they have on people and just how to read people and all those. You come across these people, and those are some of the people I try to stay away from.
It's a complete oblivious ignorance, or it's like they're so self-confident that they are ignorant in that way too.
Right, and there's nothing wrong with self-confidence.
There's nothing wrong with self-confidence, but there's also a sense of making other people uncomfortable if you're not understanding.
There's a line between there's a line between self-confidence and conceitedness
Yeah.
and obliviousness to other people. You know what I mean? Just being so involved in your own self that you don't see the world around you. But she's kind of like that. And there's a really funny scene where she goes to like sing karaoke and she's just so bad at
Yeah.
it. And they're all sitting there and they're all like,
And she
"Oh,
tries
this
to
is
make
terrible."
herself seem more important by saying she auditioned for a Spike Lee movie.
Yeah, she like in college she auditioned for a Spike Lee movie and she didn't get it and stuff like that. And anywho, that was just one scene. And I'll say this about the movie. The movie feels rather fractured when it comes to the way the scenes are lined up.
Yeah.
Like some scenes are like seconds long and some scenes are like full scenes. And then some scenes feel like random, like, well, that's kind of random. I don't know what that has to do with anything. And then some scenes push the plot along. It's a really guerrilla style, like, you know, like Steven said, like low budget, you know, type of movie.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that just seems to be like, I'm not saying this in a negative way, but filler.
No.
There are scenes of them just like hanging outside in the city, dancing, or like just having a good time with each other, and I think that is just, I don't know. I mean, with maybe more views, I could maybe understand them shots better, but I read them as
They're
just
almost
being ways of showing their relationship together.
Yeah, they're almost like bridge scenes.
Yeah, they're like bridging breaks. You know, like kind of. I don't know what the word is for it, but like in Austin Powers, where they have the little shots where he's like dancing and singing, and then he's like, "Yeah, baby, yeah," and then it goes off to the next thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Kind of.
They're like dance breaks.
They're almost like act breaks.
Yeah.
Or something like
they're
that.
Like transitional dance.
Like transitional like things that you would put in.
Except for they're longer.
But they're longer. Yeah. I'll tell you, this movie is really unique in that. And
I'll be honest with you, and this is just my perspective, being somebody that has edited things and has made things. I would assume the way that the flow of this movie is by mistake. I don't.
Okay.
I think that something that is this lo-fi and you know, this low budget, the way that the movie ended up being edited together was probably by mistake. It wasn't in the plans to make it like flow the way it did. But it's one of them things where
but I'll say this: the movie is not. It is kind of avant-garde
because it's fractured.
But
it's fractured. It's a fractured.
It's fractured, but it does flow in a specific direction. It's not nonlinear.
No, I'm not. Like I said, I'm not trying to say this in a negative way, but I think that the way that the movie flows is just a happenstance of how the movie ended up turning out. Like it's just what ended up working for the movie. It was to get rid of a lot of fat that probably didn't need to be there. Like, for instance, something like, this reminds me of something like Breathless. You know, where Breathless can, I think, the French film, if you don't know what I'm talking about, can have that fractured feel to it also. It, like, jumps around.
It does feel very much like French New Wave.
You know,
okay. That paints a better picture than what we've been saying.
Yeah, it kind of hits the moments that are important to the themes of the story, and then it leaves everything else out. It doesn't like to meander around. And
because the film's cut pretty much to the bone. Like I said, 85 minutes long. That's a pretty streamlined movie.
Yeah. But I think it works for its style. You know.
I think it definitely works for its uniqueness and its style. And I find myself really enjoying it. And it's just part of that mold of movies in the 90s where, like, you watch them and you're like, yeah, I could probably make a movie like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it feels like an accessible movie from a technical standpoint. You know what I mean? Like how when Kevin Smith saw Slacker for the first time, he's like, wow, I can actually make a movie.
Well, I mean,
or when people saw Clerks for the first time, people were like, hey, I can actually make a movie.
Yeah, there's always like going back to Breathless, there's always a movie that kind of like is the birth of the next thing, and then everybody starts to imitate that thing, and then people seem to build off of what was like the kind of the almost the low, though it doesn't mean it's the lesser of a film, but the lower common denominator version of that style, and then they build off of that and make it even more, cleaner and more streamlined, and it looks better than that movie. Like somebody did that movie, I'm sure. Like somebody's probably made a movie very much like Watermelon Woman, but years later, and it seems more like smooth, and it seems
polished.
Polished.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this film does have a lot of rough edges. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I guess that kind of gets us to the next scene here. Speaking of, just moving things along. So this is. I guess we'll go to the scene where she meets Guinevere Turner.
Yeah, sure.
That makes sense. So she's working at the store she's working at the video store. She runs into Guinevere Turner's character, what's her name in the movie? Is it Gwen? Because that would just make things very
no,
very
I think
easier.
isn't it like Amanda or Allison or
Diana.
I'm way off.
Yeah, is her name Diana Rollins or something like
Sounds
that?
about
something
Rollins. It is Rollins.
Yeah, and she's looking for a couple of movies because I guess they're having some type of what's it like?
Well, she's trying to come up with a double
two,
feature.
Get one for free. Yeah, rent two, get one for free, or something like that. There's some deal going on, and she's looking for two movies. She needs some recommendations, and Cheryl Dunye starts recommending her some movies and stuff.
And this is look, you can have your debates about whether video stores are necessary or not.
Right.
And some people question that, because it's like, well, why would I need to go to a video store when I can just go and stream it online, blah, blah, all that stuff. But this is the kind of stuff that excites me about, wanting to have video stores and even wanting to work at one, is that you can try to inform people on, and help guide people to see certain films, which is kind of what we try to do here on this podcast. And,
right, yeah.
And
in general.
In general, yeah.
I mean, just talking movies and just knowing about movies and recommending movies to people. And I don't do it out of I know every
it has
single
nothing,
movie, so I could tell you about it. No,
it's not a pretentious
hey, I
thing.
think this movie's awesome. I think you like it.
Yeah,
and
and we can quickly. This is a quick point I want to make real quick.
Got it.
Say quick again. I'll say it quick one more time.
Do it.
But we've seen an article come out recently with Martin Scorsese where he talks about cinema. Once again, he's in the news about talking about cinema.
So he's always stirring the pot.
But he talks about how, our look at cinema has changed, and how we, have almost, it's up to us to keep what's the word I'm looking for? Keep cinema moving forward. Keep it flourishing, right, and keep it growing, and it can't be left up to the industry, which is all about making money, to keep it progressing. So we have to keep talking about the stuff that we love and the stuff that's interesting for it to actually be moved forward in the right direction.
Yeah, to be kept alive.
Yeah, and
well, he talked about the idea of curation versus algorithms when it comes to streaming. For most platforms, I mean, I watch The Watermelon Woman on streaming because that's where it's mostly available.
Yeah.
And I watched, when I first watched it on the Criterion channel.
Yeah.
I believe. And on the Criterion channel, he specifically mentioned it, is whether it's Criterion channel, whether it's Turner Classic Movies or whatever, most of those collections and the way those movies are put on there is from curation, which means that they're picked for a reason.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're picked for whatever thematic reason or clumped together for whatever reason. But when it comes to things like Netflix or Hulu or whatever, those places are more algorithm based. So they're based off of I don't know, calculations and formulas.
Well, I mean,
based off of what you may like versus, hey, there are these movies that are amazing and they're all, in here together, watch them. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it's all about
rough. It's rough. It's a rough explanation here.
It's more based off of it's simplifying your interests into categories of horror movies or slashers. Your likes.
It's box. Yeah, the algorithms kind of box you into certain recommendations, and it doesn't help us as viewers or else as movie watchers or movie lovers to grow our palette or to discover, Cinema Discovery Project, discover other movies and other places and other things, because it's just going for something specific.
And of course, then of course, a lot of these streaming services are only keeping up with what is newest,
popular,
and what is popular. Yeah. So their selection is not going to be actually broad enough to give you a wide, even if it is going off of their algorithms, it's not going to be broad enough of a curation to actually give you something that's of wide range from the 40s, 50s, 60s. It's going to give you in the last 20 years. It's going to give it's going to give you the newest thing. And so back to what this movie is this is an example right here of why what Scorsese said in that article is very important. This is an example where she's asking for a movie and she's like, hey, look, what would be good to go with? I can't remember what movie was it. What was she watching?
Yeah, I don't know. There were, goodness, I can't remember. She recommended, oh God, I can't remember. But Cheryl recommended to pair Repulsion and Carrie together.
Yeah. It was Repulsion and something else.
I thought it was Carrie.
No, well, Carrie was her first suggestion, and then to pair it with whatever the movie was that she had.
Okay.
And then it was, from there.
I remember because Gwyneth Paltrow said she didn't like Sissy Spacek. She was too pale.
Yeah.
I don't like.
I just can't remember what the movie was that she had already.
I can't. I wish I could bring up the movie now.
But
But anyway, but what we're trying to say is that what we're trying to say.
What we're trying to say is that
store. We're trying to kind of take that video store mentality and bring it into the modern world, into modern cinema viewing or movie viewing, and it's kind of tough.
It's tough really because everything's being curated for you in a very shallow way. Is the best.
I'll say this though, Stephen. I'm not going to put a kibosh on this whole thing, but I'm just saying, like, one of the most frustrating things is when people know that you're a big movie fan, and they ask you for recommendations, like, "Hey, give me a good movie to watch," and you're like, I'm going to need a little bit more information on that.
Yeah, because
for me, a good movie is like, I don't know, a 1940s film noir. For you, that may not be your thing.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, and it's tough. It's tough being somebody that is invested as much in movies as much as we are, and trying to have conversations with people that don't have that.
That's tough.
That outlook, and not to seem like assholes. Like,
yeah, not to sound elitist, but it is kind of tough to not come off as an asshole, like you said, to not come off as elitist, because it's never really my intention. I'm just super passionate and super love movies. It's kind of weird. Literally, I live, breathe, and eat movies from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed.
It's kind of weird that. Trying to have trying to be intellectual about something like this, like film, is frowned upon. Honestly, it happens with a lot of things. Not even just film, but trying to be smart about anything these days they just put you down as being pretentious.
And you know what's crazy about that? We're going off on a tangent, so reel me back in. Is that us growing up, we were taught. At least what I was taught, or what I perceived to be, the way the world was teaching me, is that education is everything. Yeah. Go to school, go get a college degree, be smart, you'll get a great job, all this kind of stuff. Yet, like you just said, Stephen, being intelligent now is considered frowned upon.
Now everybody's education is based off of what the mob thinks on social media.
It's like, you're an elitist because you watch Criterion movies from the 30s or something like that. Or you're an elitist because you want to have a discussion about, racial representation in movies from the 20s and 30s. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like this movie, like just to bring it back to The Watermelon Woman, this movie's trying or attempting to have a deep discussion about the lost representation of, black actors and actresses in film in the 20s and 30s and even 40s. And it's just, trying to, have an intellectual discussion about movies, just movies, is tough to have sometimes. But we can still do it here on the Cinema Discovery Project,
we can.
which we do.
And so she helps her out with some movies, and they don't really, at first they can't really come to terms on what she wants. Because she, like you said, she doesn't like Carrie, and she doesn't know if she wants to watch Repulsion, and blah blah. So so then she kind of leaves her, and then she goes back to the counter, and her friend Tamar's like, "Who's that hottie?" Though she is a white girl, banter. She's hot for a white girl.
It's like, well, one, if you noticed the way in which Guinevere Turner's body language was in that whole exchange, she was very much, I mean, for the lack of a better term, attracted to or quote unquote checking out Cheryl's character. Yeah. Just the way in which she was looking at her, she looked at her right when she walked away. Just the body language and the look of it, was telling. And I think it was done purposely. Yeah. To really, indicate that she was interested in Cheryl's character.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Cheryl noticed it initially until her friend, told her about it. And sometimes that can happen, where sometimes your friends notice things that you don't notice. Or sometimes they can be very wrong.
Of course.
They could be super wrong. I've seen swingers. Sometimes your friends can be wrong about things.
But then she gets back to the counter, and after that little exchange, I think the boss has introduced a new employee.
What a guy.
Yeah.
What a guy. Such an asshole.
But there's
He's always getting on. Yeah. He's always picking on Tamara about something.
Yeah.
So there's a new employee, like Steven said, and they have to show her the ropes, show her how to basically check someone out. And I forgot about this really annoying aspect of the video store. Was like, so do you have a membership? So what's your name on your membership? All that kind of stuff.
What's your phone number? What's your
phone number? What's your address?
Yeah.
What's your social security number?
Yeah, it's like, god damn.
Maybe not social security number, but like credit card number.
Yeah.
What I thought was interesting, they needed her credit card? Was that because of like...
Well, if you say you stole something.
Yeah, was it for that reason?
So you can be charged later, yeah.
Kind of like how you have to give a credit card at like a hotel or something? Well,
nowadays everything's logged into computers. The way they did credit cards then, and you can still do it. They had a swiper, yeah. I've used a swiper.
I remember those.
Yeah, so yeah, they get all our information, and by the end of it, the new employee says, Cheryl Dunye's like, so that's how you check out a customer. She's like, no, that's how a customer checks out an employee.
Yeah, I know.
She was picking up on you the whole time.
She was. So then we move on to where Cheryl's kind of working on her documentary, where she interviews people on the street.
Yeah. Well, they ask them questions about, do you know the watermelon woman?
Yeah, you're the watermelon woman. And then some people are like, no.
The funny thing is there's one woman that literally actually gets it right, kind of. Like, she's like, she sounds like an actress maybe from the 40s or 50s. She sounds like she gets it right technically. She says it.
Yeah, she's like, oh, wasn't she? Yeah, wasn't she?
Well, she doesn't really know for sure, but she's like, by her name, it sounds like she's an actress, some kind of actress from the 30s or 40s, or like.
Yeah, most people have no idea what she's talking about. One person was like, oh, is she from Philly? Like, I think she's from Philly.
Oh yeah, she's that one that like making. You can tell these people are lying; they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's just random people on the street, but. This is kind of, we'll talk about something contemporary. I mean, that show, Billy Eichner, Billy on the Street, where he would just interview random people with he would have like a celebrity guest with him or whatever, and he would just ask them random questions. Kind of reminded me of that.
A little bit, yeah.
Kind of reminded me of that. And it's just fascinating that she was doing this back in like the 90s as just like a segment in a movie. And so she's doing that, and then she interviews her mother.
Yeah.
And I have to check. As I don't know if it's her, it was her real mother, Irene Dunye, is credited in the movie as Irene Dunye. And basically, she's just asking her mother who the watermelon woman is, and she's showing her pictures or showing her the cover of the back of the VHS and whatnot. And then her mother's like, "Oh yeah, I think we saw her. She was a singer. We saw her in like a club back in I don't know
She
whenever."
didn't seem very reliable, though.
No, but that's the thing is like that's what I was talking about earlier. Where it's like, oh, that's really coincidental.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you just happen to see this random actress in this '30s movies in a club.
And of
back
course,
in,
this
like,
is fictitious.
the '50s
so,
and '60s.
You know,
Yeah,
it's
fictitious.
acting.
Yeah, it's all fictitious.
It's acting.
And you could tell. You know, I have no idea about Irene Dunye's mother. I don't think she's an actress or anything like that. A lot of these people in this movie are probably not.
I was gonna say if there's any negative about the movie is that they're not great actors. You know, like even Cheryl Dunye is not a great actor.
I mean,
personally, you can tell she's not practiced.
Some scenes she's great. Yeah, some scenes are a little rough, but it's all part of I think the charm and the you know the independent feel of the movie. And basically, when you have only like a limited budget to work with, you get whoever you can, whenever you can. Hold open auditions for whatever. You know what I mean? There's some, but there are some who are really, really bad. There's a later scene in the movie with two people dressed as cops, and they look like they're wearing like Halloween costumes.
Yeah, God.
They look like the hot cops from Arrested Development, if everyone remembers that show. And it's just weird. And then there's one actress who was at one of the archives, and some of her line readings, I was like,
yeah,
all right, I guess this was the best they had. But it's part of the charm of the movie. But anyway, she's interviewing her mother, and her mother like identifies like, you know, yeah, she was singing in the clubs in the Philadelphia back in the day. And then and her mother tells her about
didn't she give her the name the first?
Yeah, no. She doesn't get the name until she visits some woman later on.
Okay,
but I think either her mother or her mother's friend tells her about the guy who had like all the movie memorabilia.
Yes,
the guy Lee Edwards, and I'm trying to see here. Yeah, I think so she goes and sees the guy with the movie memorabilia first, I think, and because she's trying to ask him about the Watermelon Woman and Martha Page.
Yeah,
because Martha Page is the director. This is important, actually. The director of Plantation Memories. Yeah,
and they continued to work together a lot after that.
Yes, they did, but I don't want to quite reveal
sure
that relationship quite yet. So she goes and visits this guy. And this guy has like all kind of movie posters and movie memorabilia and like film reels and like he's got his own little like IMDb archive working at his house.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me a lot of myself in a way. But the guy he doesn't really know who the Watermelon Woman is. Doesn't really know who Martha Page is.
It very much paints the picture of what the movie's about, which so he's like, I'm looking for this black actress. He's like, I don't really know much I don't have expertise in black actresses from that time.
No, he doesn't. Yeah. She kind of like calls him out.
Well, her friend calls him out on. It's like, well, obviously.
Yeah, she's got the camera.
Yeah,
well, obviously.
Yeah.
And it goes to show that predominantly when it's come to movie education, cinema education and just cinema, aficionados and all that kind of stuff, it's very male dominated.
And this isn't just them. I'll say this about myself. I know way more about male filmmakers than I do female, and that's something I want to be able to change.
Yeah, and it's really because it's part of the education system. It's part of the awareness. It's part of just the history of cinema in general. I think is very extremely male dominated. Yeah. In terms of like what we learn about when we learn about cinema. Yeah. The golden age of cinema, we learn about all these great filmmakers and stuff like that, but it's all men. It's all
usually
men.
Yeah.
And the only time we really learn about actresses, and the only time we really learn about women when it comes to their involvement in film is when they're actresses.
Yeah.
You really have to dig. You really have to look past that when we learn that. You know what? Back in the day, women were editors. Women were costume designers. Women were working on productions of films. Back in the the teens and 20s in the silent era, women were prominent directors, really famous directors, and it's really you really have to like do your own history history diving or diving into history about all this and like kind of learning this stuff. There's not really a lot of stuff they typically teach in film schools, at least for the most part.
Yeah.
But I think the scene in the film really depicts that well, where it's a male-dominated when it comes to learning about the history of movies, because all the posters and all this archives and all this kind of stuff he has, it's all cool stuff, but it's all about men.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with, unnamed black actresses in the 30s. So he's a really know-how.
And he's a black man.
True.
That's what's also kind of another layer of it. But he gives her kind of like a history lesson of the way Philadelphia was in like the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and how the club scene was and stuff like that, and how it was really bopping back in the day, and it still gives her another clue for her to build upon to go to look for something else. But Cheryl also meets Shirley, who is not only a gay woman like herself, but this is where we really find the identity of the watermelon woman. And we find out that her name is actually Faye Richards, and she was like a club lounge singer or whatever. She was like a singer back in the day, and they used to see her on stage and stuff in Philadelphia. Yeah. And we also find out that Faye Richards, the watermelon woman, is also a gay woman too, a lesbian. Yes.
And it's really fascinating how all these things kind of connect to the Cheryl character personally. And we also see that, and it's really kind of interesting how we're seeing all this tapestry and all these puzzle pieces come together.
Yeah, so I think from there, do we get this? We go back to the video store and
let's talk about this scene. I thought this scene was effing hilarious.
Yeah.
This scene was
So the
like
boss comes in and he has a stack of movies that apparently were requested and by
someone,
a Miss Rawlings, and
right.
This is of course an attempt at a scam by what we talked about earlier. And now we talked about how Tamara's like obsessed with sexuality. She not obsessed, but she
not obsessed,
but she talks about it a lot though. I mean, she
has a healthy sexual appetite, and
she decides she wants to look at some male porn.
Yeah, she's curious.
She's curious. She specifically apparently.
But anywho,
bald
like
bald male big black bald men.
Yeah. Anywho, so for those of you who aren't with it, back in the 90s, you could rent pornography from many a video store. They would usually have a special section.
Yeah.
That would probably be in the back somewhere,
behind a curtain.
Usually behind a curtain or some beads or whatever.
Yeah.
They would be behind a door. Anywho, a special section where, like, I guess the light would be a little bit lower, so I guess people couldn't see each other or whatever. You know what I mean? So basically, back in the 90s, you could do this, and I think that like those types of special places in video stores, I think, survived well into the DVD era.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Of renting movies.
Now, of course, these places were not in like your chains like Blockbuster. You'd have to go to a more privately owned video store.
Yeah, not even no real chains had it, but like local video stores.
The closest to a chain that ever had an adult section was FYE. FYE had it.
They did have an adult section. Yeah. Holy, they still do.
Yeah.
But when we say adult section, we're right. But what they did at FYE, and I think they still do. I don't know if they got rid of them yet. It's been a while since I've been in FYE. But they used to have them. They would put like covers over the DVDs.
Black covers over the adult films.
Yeah, they would.
They're like stoppers for the movies, and they're all.
And they would cover them and stuff. But to be honest, that's not much of a protection against like some random, like a child or someone wasn't expecting it, could just go in and just remove the cover, because it wasn't like there wasn't a lock and key. You just kind of like lifted up the cover and there it was. It's not.
Yeah, well,
it's not exactly secure.
You got to see it somewhere.
That's true. I guess that's true. I mean, I
But
guess that's true. But anywho, that kind of lasted all the way into the DVD era of renting movies. And what happens is Tamara, the character, decides to rent some pornographic videotapes under uh, under Guinevere Turner's character's name. But what happened is one of them they couldn't get for some reason.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, like, their supplier just didn't have it. It reminded me a lot of that scene in Clerks where Randall he's calling up the distributor and he's like ordering a bunch of stuff and it's all pornographic movies. And there's just like a woman and her kid like standing right there or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, that's the kind of shit that would happen in the 90s. Because in the 90s, people have to remember, man, it wasn't like it is now culturally. Growing up in the 90s, you were exposed to a lot of stuff very quickly, very fast, in terms of like, whether it be sexuality stuff or whether it be, stuff you weren't supposed to be seeing at such a young age. I don't know if that was the case with you, Steven, but it was kind of, you know what I mean? I just felt like if you go back and watch movies that are set in the 90s, the language is so non-politically correct, so the way it is now. You know what I mean? Like back in the 90s, like when you were a kid, you could stay out all day roaming the neighborhood with your friends. You can't. How many times do you see that now? Hardly ever.
No,
you know what I mean? It's a completely different world.
I think we definitely there was a lot more of an opportunity to be exposed to things like this. And nowadays you can much more easily access things like that.
I'm not saying any of that was right.
I'm not saying it was right, but it was the culture was more.
It was different.
Was different then, and
there was a lot of ignorance back then.
Definitely,
really a lot of ignorance when it came to a lot of the stuff people were exposed to, at young ages and whatnot. But I'm just saying that, like, for example, like I just said, there's a video store, looks like everybody went in there, yet they still had pornographic videotapes in it. You know what I mean? That's just kind of the way it was. And basically, so she ordered it under her name, and just so happens that Guinevere Turner's character happens to be in the video store on that exact same moment.
Of course.
And she's like, yeah, I want to check these two out. And then the guy's like, oh yeah, he's gonna check her out. And he goes, oh yeah, Miss Rollins, we have those videotapes you requested. And meanwhile, Cheryl and Tamara are behind him, like trying to signal her to being like, yeah, just go with it, just go with it. And she's like, and then she's a good sport, just kind of rolls with it. And
then Cheryl goes up to her and thanks her.
Like, yeah, thank you for doing that. Sometimes we have this scam where, we rent tapes under like a random person's name, and we preview them. We basically get them for free, essentially.
But then then this is where she makes her move on him.
Diana says, hey, if you want these tapes, you're gonna have to come by my place. And then Cheryl's like, oh, what's your address? And she's like, oh, look it up. I'm in the system, I guess. And it's like, oh, hey now. Yeah. So then she goes back to them, and she's like, yeah, I think it was Tamara said that she's gonna give you the tapes, and she's like, yeah, but I have to go pick them up at her place. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah. But what we didn't say though is that Tamara has this kind of thing against Diana's character, or at least the relationship between Cheryl and Diana. It slowly grows as the movie goes along, and in the next like kind of part of the movie, it's when it really kind of explodes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where that relationship is kind of going.
So we move on to.
Do you want to go to?
Was she?
Hold on, I'm looking at stuff here. Do you want to go to where she picks up the tapes? Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go to that. So basically, she goes and picks up the tapes at Guinevere Turner's place, and we learn, we learn about like their relationship there. I mean, they really hit it off pretty well. There's a whole there's a whole really, like I said, graphic, honest sex scene between the two of them. Very.
I think it's very well filmed. I mean,
it is very well filmed.
Yeah,
it's not too long. it's not like it's not gratuitous. It's very natural, I think.
Oh yeah.
And which is, and there's no like, it's not like a Hollywood sex scene or anything like that with like, saxophone music playing and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But I'll do say this though, she gets very, very intimate angles in terms of the camera work and stuff like that. So you really get the sense of the intimacy of, two people having sex with one another. Yeah. It's a very intimate act. I don't think I need to explain that to people. No. But so their relationship is hitting it off, and what Cheryl comes to realize is that like, Diana's not typically her type of woman, but she likes being with her. Yeah. And I think that's kind of interesting how how Cheryl's learning about stuff about herself, learning about her sexual sexual tastes and things like that. And I guess it's a good time to say bring this up. I mean, I know Guinevere Turner from her work as a writer, screenplay writer. She has written screenplay. She I think is most well known for writing the screenplay for talk about sexual movie or just sexually aggressive movie, American Psycho. Yeah. The Mary Harron film. She also wrote the script for this movie called Go Fish, which came out in 1994, and that's important because it's a movie that also inspired a lot of the aspects of, I think, Kevin Smith's best film in Chasing Amy, and which Guinevere Turner was also in that movie as well. Yeah, in a small scene, and in part of the plot of that movie was actually taken from something in, I believe, the movie Go Fish, and just Guinevere Turner in general. And I thought that was just really kind of fascinating how all of these, independent movie worlds are connecting with one another in the 90s. It's like 6 degrees of independent cinema in the 90s. But Guinevere Turner is also an actress. She has 60 film credits to her name. She was also actually in American Psycho. She's in one scene in that movie as well. But yeah, I just know Guinevere Turner, and she's a very striking woman on screen. I thought she was really interesting how she was in this movie, and just what her character kind of represents. And I think we'll get into that relatively soon, because her character unwittingly drives a pretty harsh wedge between Cheryl and Tamara's friendship. And I found that to be very interesting. That brings up a whole other kind of thematic exploration of the relationships between black and white people and just, the black community in general. But I'll touch upon that a little bit later. But let's get back to what Cheryl's been working on. Cheryl, back to her movie. She meets with one of the most pretentious cultural critic, almost like a film professor that I've ever seen. And basically, what Cheryl has also learned is that Martha Page and Faye Richards had a relationship with one another, had a romantic relationship with one another. And that is something completely unheard of when it comes to the times in which those people lived. Yeah. And what is interesting is that she brings that up to this intellectual, if you will, this cultural critic, this, I guess, maybe film historian, and she just not dismisses it outrightly, but it's one of those, if you've we just talked about how difficult it is to have intellectual conversations with people, but then you get the people who are on the far end of the spectrum, the snooty people, the pretentious people, the people who like think they know everything. I've come across these college professors, trust me, and basically if it's not something that they've heard about specifically or know, they kind of dismiss it. You know what I mean? It's that level of snootiness, and this woman is so snooty, and it's really fascinating just to see that end of the spectrum, but she was kind of well versed in like the mammy archetypes and things like that, like we talk about with Hattie McDaniel and things like that. But what Cheryl also does is she goes to the Center for Lesbian Information and Technology. You can put that anagram together
Wow.
for yourself. And she finds photographs of Faye Richards, including one photograph given by Faye to a June Walker. And what is funny about this scene is that we talked about earlier about, how there were just like these archives you had to go through and sift through papers and books and pictures to find, information. There wasn't like the wide world of information we have today where you can just, you can just Google search anything today. You can probably find an answer to it. And so she's there, and for some reason, but the person who's like kind of running the place is a little odd. He's a little odd. And this was the woman I referenced earlier who, not the best line reading actress I've ever seen. she's not great. Basically, she doesn't want them photographing anything or recording anything, yet she must know that there's a person there holding a camera. What do you think they're doing? So she keeps trying to like get her to like, stop holding that up to the camera, stop photographing it. Basically, they get kicked out of that institute.
Yeah.
But she's got information that she needs now. And Cheryl also manages to contact Martha Page's younger sister. And this is an interesting scene because this scene is done entirely through narration, and there's a lot of narration in the movie, which we really didn't cover. And this is a scene that I found to be very interesting, but it's also a scene that we see in a lot of movies.
Yeah.
In a lot of like mainstream movies when it comes to, family members having to deal with the sexual identity of their other family members and the denial of that, the straight up denial. So Martha's younger sister basically just denies that Martha ever had a sexual relationship or romantic relationship with Faye Richards. And also, she is very, very racist.
Yeah.
She is very racist. Basically, she was like, oh yeah, my sister had a great life before, certain people came around, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I guess we know what you mean, Miss Racist Lady. Yeah. And they basically get kicked out of there, too. It's like,
well, that's what happens when you're delving into something that nobody seems to care about and wants to keep a secret,
Yeah, when you're delving into like people's past lives and people's personal lives, sometimes other people who were involved in those personal lives don't want to talk about it or don't want to be a part of it or straight up deny the actual reality of it for, I guess, their own prejudices. And it's just really interesting how the way that scene was done. But from there, Cheryl and Diana are. We see them, they grow closer together. I think they're having a double date dinner type thing with Tamara and the woman that she's seeing. And basically we learned a lot about Diana, how she basically has like, she grew up like all over the world. She was born in Jamaica. She's very into kind of like Black culture and stuff like that. And all this kind of stuff. And what we see throughout that sequence is that Tamara is just like interrogating her and is really dismissive of her.
Yeah.
And it's a really, like I said, dry, like she's kind of driven a wedge through the Cheryl and Tamara friendship.
Well, she accuses her of trying to be black.
Yes.
And then...
and this is the whole line that I brought. This is what I was talking about earlier about like, that's an interesting conversation to bring up in this movie that already has so many different conversations in it.
It's definitely a subject matter that has been kind of brought up in other movies, even as recent as now. I mean, like the movie Blind Spotting.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Yeah, that came out a couple years ago, has very much similar situation where the two leads, one being white, one being black, are friends, but the white friend seems to always try to get them in trouble, and it's like he tries to be part, very close to the black community, tries to do what a lot of what black culture is, and it's like he kind of blurs that line because he thinks that being a certain way is being black, but it's not really what all black people are like, like.
Yeah, it's like what is. It brings up like, what defines
being
black culture versus white culture. What, cultural appropriation is another thing people like to discuss.
Yeah.
I mean, this idea of and just kind of the idea of interracial relationships as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who still frown upon that in the modern world, and even sometimes your friends can frown upon if you're in an interracial relationship. People that you have come to love and trust, and they're your best friends. You think that they would be cool with you being happy with whomever you're with, but sometimes that's not the case. Prejudices can tend to crop up everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really fascinating. And she and Tamara accuses Cheryl of like trying to be white, and that's something that's also another conversation starter as well. And I thought that was really, really fascinating, and she believes that Diana may just have a fetish for black people. That's another thing. Sometimes white people can have a fetish for black people or for black culture or whatever. And yeah, there's so much happening in this movie, and there's so many different things that are going on, and just a lot of that's what I think makes this movie kind of timeless and very contemporary. Definitely. Because all of these discussions, all these themes are still really prevalent today.
Yep. Now
so more than ever, especially the racial stuff, and especially a black representation in film. We're still having this discussion now about it's more been expanded to female representation, minority representation in general, and we're also talking about disability representation as well.
And queer representation.
Queer representation. I mean, the discussions never end because there doesn't ever seem to be a solution to any of this. At least a solution anytime soon that would cover everything. So moving on now, Cheryl decides that she's going to. Does she have? It's not quite a breakup scene, but it's a fight that she has with Diana, and it's kind of the last scene we see with Diana, is when they're together in bed, and Cheryl just like, and Cheryl.
Well, she decides she wants to go work on her project.
Yeah, but they have this tiny little fight where Diana says something like, she had like 3 ex-black like boyfriends when she was younger or something like that, and then she had like a relative who married someone who was black or something like that, and that really like that kind since Tamara planted that idea of Diana having the fetish for black people, maybe that kind of like is playing on Cheryl's mind in that moment, and she's like, maybe Tamara is right, you know what I mean? And that kind of like gets like, she's like, I just gotta go, I gotta get out of here, but it's not really a breakup scene, and we never get to see like if that relationship over or is it going to continue. We never get that type of closure with that plot line in the movie. Because we move on to where Cheryl's kind of wrapping up the journey of her documentary, and she continues her next step where she phones Cheryl phones June Walker, who was Faye's partner or girlfriend for 20 years, and they arrange to meet. And when Cheryl gets there, apparently she's been taken to the hospital. Yeah. And does she end up dying? Or
we don't ever know. We
don't really know that end of that plot line ever. She just kind of meets like a neighbor, and the neighbor says, "Yeah, they took her away in an ambulance like yesterday or something like that." But she leaves a letter for Cheryl, and the letter basically tells her that when I heard you bring up the name Martha Page, I got mad. I was upset because because Martha really didn't have anything to do with Faye's real life, essentially, or something like
basically that who Faye was not propped up by this white woman,
Yeah, and and Faye was so much more than I believe what Cheryl had come to know who Faye was.
Yeah.
The watermelon woman, the woman who was in these movies and stuff like that. But she was so much more than that. And And I thought that was really interesting how the letter basically told Faye to tell the history of, Faye, not only Faye Richardson, but I think all of the Faye Richardsons.
Yeah.
In quotes. You know what I mean? All the women like Faye Richardson.
There's an interesting parallel there with, where she's trying to say, not to kind of like not define her by the director, which is, a white woman, just kind of how, Diana and Cheryl were, a mixed couple. There's kind of like an interesting parallel there.
Oh, yeah, there's a connection there.
Where we're talking about interracial relationships and, am I defining myself by her, we our own individuals, and I think that there's an evolution between the two relationships, and maybe that's what maybe she figures out by the end of the movie for her own relationship with Diana through
because and what is interesting is the movie ends in a very, not a sad state, I would say a real state. Basically, she's not with Diana anymore, I believe. So that we don't really get to see that dissolution of that relationship on screen, but apparently it's no longer a thing. Tamara and her are no longer speaking with one another. But she's come to the end of her journey, and her journey of discovering Faye Richards. And basically we get to see in the last, I don't know, what's it, like 15 minutes of the movie or so, we get to see like her documentary.
Yeah.
And we get to see where she goes through the life and career of Faye Richards as she has come to know her as, the watermelon movie, the watermelon woman, watermelon movie, the watermelon woman, but also celebrating. There's a scene in her movie where she holds up all the pictures of all the black actresses who've played the mammy roles, who've played the watermelon woman roles, and she's just holding them up in front of the camera and flipping through them, and just kind of honoring them. But also there was also a part of the letter from June Walker that said, you have gotten to this moment because of them as well. They paved a way for you as well, and it's a way to honor them. It's the film, I'm telling you, The Watermelon Woman, for as rough as this film is, when it comes to the technical stuff, when it comes to the acting that we've pointed out, man, there's so many levels of deepness in there. It's really, really good because you can build upon this and then further explore out, because The Watermelon Woman is fictitious. The movies that she was in were fictitious, but there were other watermelon women out there who we can look up and discover for ourselves as movie viewers. So the film kind of just sets you off on a path of like educational discovery. In cinema, which I think that's really a fantastic part of the movie.
Yeah, I think it also
makes the movie so good.
Yeah, I think it also, when it comes to the narrative part of the story, like you said, where she kind of separates with Diana and Tamara, and it shows how sometimes when it comes to getting to the truth of things, the people that can't seem to see the truth for what it is are the ones that maybe really ain't the people that you need in your life. Like even her friend Tamara, who they were really good friends before, couldn't seem to see things the same way that she saw things.
Would you say that Cheryl perhaps outgrew her friend Tamara?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
because there is, I believe there's a part in the movie where Cheryl kind of just says that Tamara kind of just sees things on a very surface level.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We see what Tamara's interests are, and they seem rather, I wouldn't say superficial. They just seem more surface level.
They seem to be one-dimensional.
They seem to be more surface level when it comes to just, human interaction and stuff like that. She doesn't seem like someone who wants to have a deep discussion about, the history of, black women in cinema. You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't seem like a type of person.
Every time she tries to, she's helping Cheryl. It's always, she's trying to get out of it, or she's trying to rush through it, or she's not really involved, at all.
Yeah, she doesn't really want to, she wants to help out, but not really help out.
But only in a way, only in a means to get her to hang out with her to do other things.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, yeah, and sometimes, I mean, you go through life and sometimes you outgrow people as well. You know what I mean? There's sometimes you're just moving in different directions from people that you've known forever.
Yeah.
You can move in direction from your very closest best friend. Sometimes you just drift away and that's the way the world in life takes you. And the film is very real in that perspective as well. And it's very real in the sense that, sometimes relationships don't work out. Yeah. Good relationships, too. From what we saw, her relationship with Diana seemed to be a good relationship. They seemed to be connected with one another, and for whatever reason, just didn't work out.
I think maybe by the end of it, maybe she, as you said, maybe questioned whether Diana's interest in her was pure or not, and maybe that's partly because of her friend's suggestion.
And it very well could have been self-sabotage from Cheryl's standpoint. It could have been,
definitely.
And that's also very real.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. But it's something I think she maybe learned after her experience on the documentary that maybe, maybe in the future past the movie she got back together with Diana. Who knows?
For all we know. Yeah. Watermelon Woman 2? Electric Boogaloo?
There's always an Electric Boogaloo somewhere.
That's true. So I guess we'll wrap this up right now because we've gone through the whole movie and really did a deep dive into it, at least a deep dive for us. And yeah, this has been The Watermelon Woman.
And this is a hard movie to do a deep dive on because there's not a lot of info about it. It's a very...
Yeah, there's not a lot of info about it, but I just Google Cheryl Dunye's name and you will find interviews and stuff like that about her, because apparently this movie's had quite a bit of a revival over the last several years or so. Because I did say it is over 20 years old. It is a movie that is celebrated amongst the LGBTQ community, and it's an important movie within that in new queer cinema, in queer cinema in general. And it's a really good movie. It's a great movie, but like I said, it's kind of tough to find to watch. Because if you don't know about it, I just happened to stumble across it because random people were talking about it one time on Twitter.
Yeah.
And it happened to be streaming on, on Criterion Channel at the time, as well as a bunch of her short films were on there for a little bit last year as well. So if you can find her work, I would highly recommend watching her work. Her short films are really good, and The Watermelon Woman is also really good. I've seen a couple of her other feature films as well. Definitely different than The Watermelon Woman. But I also wanted to see, I just wanted to see where it was available. I don't know if I know there's no Blu-ray available. I want to see if there's a DVD available.
There's a DVD, but it's like very almost old. Basically out of print. There needs to be some kind of restoration of this and put out. Somebody needs to do it because there's no reason why it shouldn't have a good physical media.
Yeah, the DVD had a 20th anniversary edition in 2017, and that's available for $20 on Amazon. Okay. It is available to stream, to rent. I streamed it, like I said, on the Criterion Channel. I also streamed it.
I don't think it's not on there anymore.
No, it's not.
I went to Fandor.
Did you stream it there?
Yeah. Fandor. I was able. You can get a free trial, and that's what I did. And
you know where I streamed it from, of all places? Showtime.
Oh, okay.
Showtime had it streaming. I was like, okay. There's other places that have it streaming as well. I just have to look them up.
I think Hulu also.
I think you can rent it, obviously.
Yeah.
On Amazon and stuff like that to stream. like I said, I really want a Blu-ray edition of this movie.
Yes.
I don't know what.
This sounds like a
this
Criterion.
This sounds like Criterion.
Yeah.
It sounds like Criterion. I was gonna say maybe even Kino, because Kino seems to is getting their hands on everything.
They get their hands
days.
on everything, but I'd rather a Criterion.
So would I. So would I, just for, I don't know, pompous sake. But either way, give me some special features. Give me some new special features. I want new interviews and all that kind of stuff. You can stream it if you have subscriptions to DirecTV, Fandor, Canopy, which you can actually sign up to Canopy if you have a library card.
Yeah.
That's how you sign up for Canopy. Like I said, Showtime has it. So it's available to see, but it's something you have to discover.
And yes, you gotta spend. To find movies like this, you gotta wanna look. Like it's. There's a lot of people out there that are doing doing a lot better podcasts than we are doing, that have a lot more knowledge, and can give you a lot of great examples of great, hidden gems. You just gotta wanna find this stuff.
There's a lot of people much more knowledgeable than us about this stuff, and that's where I learn a lot of my stuff.
That's where I learn a lot of my stuff. Yeah,
don't ever be afraid or to not know something when it comes to movies, because then you'll never learn anything.
No,
you really
that's
won't.
right. Well, I think that's a good stopping point, and now I'm gonna put Andrew on the spot.
Woo, 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 woo!
It's his turn.
You know what's crazy? I completely forgot about this until right this moment. But I will make things up on the spot like I normally do. He will make
things up on the spot. So if you're new, we usually try to go back and forth on choosing a film, and we try to choose films that the other person hasn't seen, maybe, or even just in general is just a out of nowhere movie, kind of like this one. Watermelon Woman is not a very well known movie, so we try to keep it as interesting as we can. Sometimes we'll throw in some more relevant stuff just for fun, but we try to keep it more about discovering something new.
Right.
And so this is Andrew's turn.
It is.
And does Andrew have something in mind?
Oh man, I've got a couple things in mind.
Oh man,
I've been on kind of like a Japanese cinema
rip.
I was gonna say kick lately, but not really a kick.
Kick.
Sometimes I fall into Japanese cinema holes, and I've been trying to not fall into one recently, but I kind of want to. But I'm thinking of something. Not. I don't want to go Kurosawa just because I could always go Kurosawa. So I want to go something a little more off the beaten path. I always want to go to like Ozu or something like that, but I kind of want to go someplace else.
Oh, Jesus.
I don't know. You know what? Kind of want to talk about this movie just because cinema. I don't know if Steven has seen it before, so I kind of want him to watch it.
Okay.
So he can get his gist of it. I'm looking at it right now. I'm gonna go with Ugetsu.
Okay, I haven't seen it yet. This
Ugetsu is Kenji
Mizoguchi.
Kenji Mizoguchi's film. He did Ugetsu. He did Sancho the Bailiff, which is amazing.
I've seen Sancho the Bailiff. Yes.
Yeah, he did. I saw a couple of his other films, but he's also done Life of Oharu. He's done. Didn't I see this movie? The Story of the Last Chrysanthemum is another film I have from him. He's a really good director. I almost was gonna go with something from the director of Harakiri, who is
Kobayashi.
Yeah.
That would have just been another you trying to do something for me. You were.
The thing is, Yeah. Well, the thing is, he's not. He's done. Kobayashi's done more than just samurai.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Like Quiet.
Oh God, that
really
movie's
good.
so good.
Samurai Rebellion. I don't know if you ever checked that out.
Yes,
that
I have.
Cool
yes.
Too. What else have I seen? What is this movie?
All right. Well, we're going down. We're going
because I watched Black River the other day, and that was another Kobayashi film. But anywho, Ugetsu is like this ghost story, surreal movie.
I'm pretty sure I haven't.
really
I'm
dig
pretty sure I haven't seen it, but
I don't think you.
I don't think I have. But I mean, who knows? But you know,
I almost went with we got to get out of here because I'm just going to talk about all kind of stuff. But I wanted to check one more thing, and before we really get out of here, I wanted to see if it was the same director. But no, Kaneto Shindo did Kuroneko, which is another
I know.
Japanese ghost film. He also did Onibaba.
Yes, that's good.
Anywho, before we start talking about Japanese cinema, because we'll do that next time, do you want to take us out?
Yeah, well,
because I don't remember the outro.
Well, usually I'm the one that does it. Where can we find you, Andrew?
You can find me on Twitter at Cabzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Cabzilla Productions.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can find me on Instagram at Cinema Discovery Project, or on Letterboxd at Cinema Discovery. You can find the audio for this podcast on Podbean and Apple Podcasts. Thank you once again for listening, and hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.